Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's Bible reading devotional out of the book of Isaiah. My name's Scott. So excited that you're joining us. If you would like these devotionals delivered to your email inbox, you can sign up for them if you haven't yet, 3 months in, at findcommunity.com/Bible reading. If you watched the video yesterday, you heard Pastor Rob share that this weekend we're starting a new series called Bumper Sticker Theology. It's all about these kind of pithy sayings that fit on a bumper sticker, and they kind of sound biblical, but they're really not. You're going to hear us use the phrase that they sound biblical, but they're not biblically sound. In our faith, especially with everything that we're facing in life, our faith needs something more robust than a pithy saying that fits on a bumper sticker. And this weekend, Pastor Rob's going to be looking at the phrase, the bumper sticker that you might have seen, God won't give you anything that you can't handle. And that sounds nice. And again, Rob mentioned like maybe he said that to somebody, maybe you've said that to somebody. I've probably said that to somebody. But we've never really been promised that. Like we like the idea, but we've never really been promised that in the Bible. Jesus himself, in fact, tells us that if we're his followers, we're going to face trials, we're going to face suffering, we're going to face persecution. We're going to face those things, but Jesus tells us don't worry because I am with you to the very end of the age. And so the promise isn't that we won't face difficult seasons, potentially even overwhelming situations. The promise is that God will be with us no matter what we face. And we see this throughout the Bible, including in the passage we're going to be looking at today from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah is basically set up into two parts, chapters 1 through 39, and then chapters 40 through 66. 1 through 39 are all about the judgment that Israel is facing, that God's people are facing because they've been disobedient, they haven't been doing the things that he wants them to. So Isaiah basically says, hey, some horrible things are going to happen if you don't change. And then chapters 40 through 66 are much more encouraging. It's kind of like, hey, you've heard about all these bad things are going to happen, and these bad things happen, but here is God encouraging you, promising to be with you. And that's what we see in chapter 41, starting in verse 8, which says this: "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, your descendants of Abraham, my friend, I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners I called you. I said, you are my servant, I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So in spite of all their disobedience, in spite of the fact that they've been carried off into exile, God continues to reach out. God continues to encourage him. God continues to make promises that he will be there with him. He tells them, don't be afraid. He says, do not be dismayed. He promises, I will uphold you. I will lift you up. I will strengthen you. And just think about everything that God's people had to endure. God was super mad at them because they were disobedient. They'd been under constant military attack, and eventually the northern kingdom was attacked by the nation of Assyria and carried off into exile, and they basically just disappeared. And the southern kingdom of Judah, again, disobedient, nations were sent against, and eventually the Babylonians come, they carry God's people off into exile. They're in exile in Babylon for 70 years. The walls of Jerusalem are torn down, the temple's torn down. And that's what they face. And we look at that experience and we might say, you know what, that is pretty overwhelming. That's more than anybody can bear. But even in the midst of that, God promises that he will be with them. He will strengthen them. He will uphold them. He will encourage them. That is the promise that God gives to his people in Isaiah, and that's the promise that he gives to us today. And so where in your life might you need that promise, that God is with you regardless of what you face? Maybe you're just looking at your life right now and you've been out of work because of the coronavirus and you're facing financial hardships. Maybe your kids are just crazy and they're running around all over the place and you don't know how to keep them entertained. Maybe you feel the weight of social unrest in your life and confronting racism in this world. Maybe you're just scared for yourself or for a loved one with a compromised immune system and this virus isn't going away. I know for me, the past 3 months have been so up and down. Our 11-month-old son, Josiah, he doesn't sleep very well, so my wife, Alicia, and I were generally facing the day without getting much sleep. Moving church online has presented tremendous challenges, most of which will wake me up in the middle of the night when my son isn't, and I'll just stay awake for a couple hours trying to think about how to pull this off. Or, like I said, our 3-year-old or 4-year-old daughter, she's just nuts, and I think she's sick of seeing us and wants to see other people. There's so much going on in our lives, and when that happens, it can feel overwhelming. And when that happens, when life feels overwhelming, it doesn't mean that God is angry with us or that our faith is somehow deficient. It's just the reality that we live in a broken world. But the hope we have is that God loves us, and He will strengthen us, and He will uplift us, and He will carry us through. So I encourage you, whatever you're facing, know that you are not facing it alone. Know that God is there with you. He is encouraging you. He is uplifting you. God is with you. That is the promise that He gives us. Not that we won't face anything that we can't handle, but that He will be with us no matter what we face. Feeling overwhelmed shouldn't make us feel like God has abandoned us, but it should remind us to lean more deeply into the God who loves us and is carrying us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I pray, I hope that you were encouraged and you lean into that promise that God has for you no matter what you're facing. Like I said, we'll be talking about this in our new series coming up this weekend. We will be back tomorrow with another Bible reading video. And if you're watching this on Tuesday, join Miss Mariah, who gave an awesome part of the message this past weekend. She will be on Facebook Live at 3 o'clock. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Love you, praying for you. See you real soon.